Hi, my name is Elly, my pronouns are she, her, and in today's video I'm talking more about my experiences being raised in purity culture. In my last video, I gave a definition of purity culture from No Shame Movement. Within the conservative Christian context, purity culture is simply the view of any discussion of things of a sexual nature outside of the context of heterosexual marriage as taboo. And I briefly explained how purity culture is both racist and transphobic. In the United States, the concept of purity was developed to support white supremacy, and it was directly tied to the harmful idea of the gender binary. You are welcome to go back and watch that video before watching this one, but I will also put the same list of resources in the description box of this video so that you can check them out here as well. As promised in my last video, today I will be talking about masturbation, modesty, and all of the harmful messages that go with those two topics. I can't remember exactly how or when I discovered masturbation, but what I do remember is being so overcome with guilt by this thing that I was doing that I wasn't even sure what it was, that I went to my mom and I confessed. And to her credit, she actually didn't shame me. She wasn't angry and she didn't scold me. She kind of said, it's not a sin per se. There's nothing in the Bible that says that you shouldn't masturbate, but it's probably not the best thing to do either, so try not to do it. And she gave me a section of a book to read. The book was called Every Young Woman's Battle. And I actually wasn't allowed to read the whole book because I think it just talked too much about sex, and I'm guessing my mom didn't want to give me any ideas that I might not have known already. But she had the chapter on masturbation marked, and she wanted me to read that. There was this story of a young woman who had written in, she had masturbated as a single person and was now having trouble in her sexual relationship with her husband. Basically, she had found a way to give herself pleasure that her husband wasn't able to replicate. And the response from the book was essentially that when you masturbate, you harm your future marriage. I specifically remember the book describing it as a spiritual death. Because this young woman had explored her own body before she got married, she had caused a spiritual death to her relationship. And it was that toxic message that I attached myself to. Yes, there's a good reason why you're feeling dirty and disgusting and wrong when you do this, because you're hurting your future husband. You're hurting yourself. I really saw it as this evil desire of my flesh that if I just prayed hard enough and if I just tried hard enough, I could overcome. I didn't understand that this was a totally natural part of my body. Dear Jesus, I am not worthy of your love. I feel especially bad today, and you know why. I know I am human, but it is temptation that I gave into. Lord, this deep, dark, secret sin that I would never tell anyone about except for Mom. You know that part of my life so well, and you are sad about it. Dear Jesus, I do not want to grieve you. Forgive me, Lord. Empower me so that I may be able to give you 100%. I truly thought my masturbation was grieving the Lord. I thought that masturbation was like at the top of his priorities. And it broke my heart that I was breaking his heart by being unable to control myself. And there was a song that kind of became my anthem for resistance, what I saw as my battle with temptation. The song is I Need You to Love Me by the Barlow Girls. The first line says, "Why are you still here with me? Didn't you see what I've done? In my shame, I want to run and hide myself." That was exactly how I felt every time I wasn't able to keep myself from masturbating. And yet, even with all this shame and these feelings of unworthiness, I was still desperate for the love and the presence of God. And so that chorus, I need you to love me. Sometimes I would kneel in the middle of my bedroom and raise my hands like this tears streaming down my face, and I would just sing this song in full abandon because I just felt it so deeply, this desperation to atone for my sins, to ask him not to cast me away, to be the girl that he wanted me to be. And an added layer to the shame is that I was taught that girls don't have sex drives. The messages were very clear. Boys want sex and girls want relationships. So for me, this added on to the what's wrong with me question I was always asking for many reasons. Why am I interested in sex? What is wrong with me? I'm a girl. I shouldn't want this. And there were just such different standards for the boys and the girls in my community. In my friend group of both boys and girls, this one group of boys, there was 3 or 4 of them, would always make these sexual jokes very publicly, like not just in front of us girls, but in front of parents as well. I don't remember all the particulars of it, but I do remember them pretending to hump each other and to say overtly sexual things, and they were never challenged. We girls always felt uncomfortable by this, and it obviously really conflicted with all these messages of staying sexually pure, taking your thoughts captive so that you're not lusting after anyone. And one friend and I went to a youth leader, and we asked him to basically talk to them and tell them to stop doing this. And he said he would, but to my knowledge, he never did, because the boys just continued to do what they had always done. That's the thing about purity culture. Most of the responsibility is on the girls. And that brings us to modesty. My experience with modesty was not just my parents telling me what I could and couldn't wear. Basically, all of the women in my life, including the moms of my friends, had a say in whether or not I was being modest. So for instance, one time I had some girls over to my house and we had a twister party, and we took silly pictures in all these different twister poses, and I posted them to Facebook, and one of the women in our community messaged me and basically told me to take them down, because even though we didn't mean anything by them, we'd be causing our Christian brothers to stumble. Any boys who were our Facebook friends would see these pictures and would be unable to control themselves and their urges. For high school graduation, I was part of this group of homeschoolers that was going to do a special ceremony together, and they had a dress committee. And this consisted of a few moms and some older girls that had graduated a few years before, and each of us senior girls would walk out with our dress on in front of them, and they would measure our straps to make sure that they were a certain amount of inches. I can't remember, it was like 1.5, 2.5. They would measure how high the dress came up to make sure that it was a certain amount up to our collarbone. They checked the material to make sure that it wasn't see-through, that it wasn't too tight, and then they checked the length of the dress. No knees could be showing. I think they said it was because we were going to be on stage, and when we sat down, you had to be careful of who could see what up your dress. And I was really, really disappointed because I wanted to wear my favorite dress. I had had it for a few years and I had worn it to many different events and occasions. At the time, I thought it was really modest, but it showed my knees, and that's why they rejected it. They said I had to get a different dress, and looking back on this, this is not only ridiculous, but super degrading. And this community input went on even after I turned 18. I remember I was at one event and I had a strapless dress, and even though it didn't show any cleavage, another mom made me put on like a little sweater to go over it. And another time I was standing on a stage and I was getting ready for an event, and a woman I had never seen before, had no idea who she was, walked up to me and went like this. And so I leaned down and I was like, "Hi." I thought she was just like being friendly or something. And she was like, "I don't think you knew this, but we can all see your shorts under your dress. So you should be really careful about that." My dress went down to my knees. I was wearing long biking shorts underneath because I was on a stage, just to make sure no one could see up there. But for her, even seeing a little bit of shorts was too much and not modest. I mean, you know those boys, they're just gonna see a tiny little flash of a biking short and it's game over, eye roll. But as an older teenager, I did start to push against these strict modesty rules. In retrospect, this had a lot to do with the state of my home life. When I was 17, we found out that my dad had been having an affair, and my parents' marriage essentially imploded. This was an extremely chaotic period of time for my family, and so honestly, my parents just weren't around. I was taking care of my younger siblings on my own quite a lot, and they weren't there to always check my clothes or my choices. So when I was 19, I bought my first bikini, but I was still very much a fundamentalist Christian. And you may be asking yourself, how can a fundamentalist wear a bikini? Well, that is a very good question. And the truth of it is, I took one of my fundamentalist beliefs and I bent it a little bit. I basically started adopting the belief that modesty is an attitude, that it's less about what you wear and more about how you carry yourself and your posture towards God on the inside. So the point of modesty was actually to be humble, not draw attention to yourself, and so it's okay to wear a bikini as long as your heart's in the right place. Now today I can see the deep hypocrisy of this. I essentially chose a new interpretation of something that I had been taught because I wanted to. I still would have totally judged other girls for sleeping with their boyfriends, but wearing a bikini was okay. I started to see those rules about what we could wear as legalistic, but other rules that went along with purity culture I still saw as valid. And that's obviously not right or fair. I shouldn't have made exceptions for myself while judging others for their exceptions. The bottom line is that the whole thing is so damn harmful. Purity culture is objectifying. I now reject it with my whole heart, and I'm determined to keep deconstructing all of those beliefs that I was taught. Those messages were all around me growing up, and they had a deeply lasting impact on me. I am so glad that I'm able to raise my daughter in a different way. I said it once and I'll say it again. Fuck purity culture. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.